I was lying face down on the wet road, rain soaking my shirt, my hands tied behind my back with cheap plastic zip ties that cut into my skin. A woman in a shiny jacket stood over me, stomping her boots, screaming like a crazy person. "You're under arrest for breaking neighborhood rules," she shouted, loud enough for the whole street to hear. "You got mud all over our clean streets. That's against the rules. You're ruining everything." The road was cold, water running past my face, gravel scratching my cheek. My truck was parked a few feet away, mud all over it from fishing at the lake that morning. I could hear doors opening, people stepping out, whispering to each other. But here's the crazy part, I wasn't even mad. I was smiling, just a little. My sheriff's badge was under my jacket, pressing against my chest, and I knew one thing for sure, this loud, bossy woman had just made the biggest mistake of her life. She had no idea she was messing with the new county sheriff. Let me tell you who I am before this gets even wilder. My name's Jim Daniels. I've got a wife, Sarah, she's the best, keeps our family strong. We have 2 kids, Tommy, he's 10, loves baseball and running around, and Ellie, she's 7, always drawing pictures or playing with our dog. 6 months ago, we moved to Pinewood, a small town with nice houses and big trees. I got a new job as sheriff of this county after working in the city for years. It's a big deal, but I didn't tell anyone here. I wanted to keep it quiet, let my family settle in without people knowing I'm the law. The city was a mess, sirens all the time, fights, late nights. Sarah said, "Jim, we need a quiet place for the kids." Pinewood looked perfect, safe streets, a big yard for Tommy and Ellie to play in. My new job's not far, just a short drive to the station, but I don't wear my badge around here. I thought I could just be Jim, not Sheriff Jim. But then this crazy lady, Karen, showed up and turned everything upside down. This whole mess started yesterday. I went fishing early, drove my truck down bumpy roads to the lake. Caught 2 fish, felt good, came back home. I parked on my street, no problem, just like always. When I got out, I saw a note under my wiper, red pen, messy writing, "Mud on truck breaks HOA rules. Clean it or pay a fine. Officer Karen Brooks, Neighborhood Patrol." I took the note inside, showed Sarah. She was making soup in the kitchen. "What's this?" she asked, laughing. "Hoa? In Pinewood?" I said, "No way. There's no HOA here, it stopped years ago. Pinewood hasn't had an HOA forever, nobody runs it anymore. We thought Karen was just a silly lady with nothing better to do." "She's nuts," Sarah said, throwing the note in the trash. I didn't think much of it either. Pinewood's a nice place, quiet, friendly, kids playing outside. But Karen's been causing trouble, leaving notes, yelling at people about their yards. I didn't know she'd come for me next. Now it's today. Rain's falling, I'm back from fishing, parked in the same spot. My truck's got mud on it, and I'm sitting there with coffee, thinking about cooking those fish for supper. Then Karen's SUV screeches up, old and gray, with fake red and blue lights taped on top. She jumps out, holding a megaphone, yelling, "Get out of the truck! You're breaking the rules!" She says the mud's bad, makes the street look dirty, and I'm a problem. I open my window a little. "It's my spot," I say, nice and calm. She doesn't care, runs over, pulls my door open. "Get out now," she screams, grabbing my arm. I put my coffee down, let her pull me out. I slip on the wet road, fall face down. She pushes me hard, grabs zip ties from her pocket, ties my hands tight. I don't stop her. I could, she's not strong, and I've handled worse. But I stay down, think of Sarah saying, "Don't make a big deal, Jim." People are watching, Mrs. Carter's filming on her phone, Mr. Jenkins stands by his door with his cane. Karen's shouting, "You're under arrest. Neighborhood rules." I smile into the wet road. She's in for a big surprise. Karen stands over me, splashing water with her boots, yelling more. "This truck's a mess," she says. "Mud's not allowed. Your mailbox is old, your grass is too long, your trash can stayed out late last week." She's holding her clipboard, reading a list like I'm the worst person ever. Rain's falling on her shiny jacket, making it look even sillier. I'm still on the ground, wet and tied up. Some neighbors nod. Mr. Jenkins says, he's right about the grass. Mrs. Carter shouts, leave him alone, Karen. I've been here 6 months, and I've seen Karen do this before. She told Sarah our car was ugly, yelled at a guy about his fence color. She acts like she's in charge, and nobody says no. I wanted a quiet life, Tommy biking, Ellie drawing. But Karen's making trouble, and I'm stuck in the middle. A police car rolls up, tires splashing through puddles. It's Pete, my deputy, tall, young, good at his job. I trained him years ago when he was just starting out. He's got a serious look, but I know he's smart. Karen sees him, gets all excited, points at me like I'm a criminal. Arrest this man, she screams, her voice cracking through the rain. He's breaking all the rules. He's not listening to me. He's ruining our street with his dirty truck. Pete steps out of the car, rain dripping off his hat. He looks at me face down, hands tied, soaking wet, and shakes his head. He's trying not to laugh. Karen, he says, loud and clear, that's Sheriff Jim Daniels you've got tied up there. I move my head, spit out some water, and twist my hands a little. The zip ties are tight, but I wiggle enough to get my jacket open. I pull out my badge, it's cold, heavy, with the county name on it. I hold it up, rain running over it, and say, Sheriff Jim Daniels. Karen's face changes fast, her eyes get huge, her mouth opens like a fish, but no words come out. She steps back, slips a little on the wet road, catches herself on my truck. Her clipboard falls, papers scattering in the puddles. I push up to my knees, look her right in the eye. I'm the sheriff, Karen, I say, slow and steady. You don't tie people up. You don't drag people out of their trucks. That's my job, not yours. The street goes wild. Mrs. Carter cheers, I knew he was special. Kids down the block start clapping, yelling, that's so cool. Mr. Jenkins bangs his cane on his porch, shouting, about time someone stopped her. A man walking his dog stops, yells, get her, sheriff. More people come out, old Mrs. Lee with her umbrella, the guy who fixes cars at the end of the street, even some teenagers on bikes who heard the noise. They're all watching, talking fast, pointing at Karen. She's done for, someone says. She picked the wrong guy, another laughs. Karen's standing there, soaking wet, her shiny jacket looking sad in the rain. Her clipboard's gone, her megaphone's on the ground, and she's shaking. She tries to talk. I didn't know. I was just, but nobody's listening. Pete walks over to me, says, you okay, boss? I nod, still holding my badge. I'm fine, I say. But she's not. Pete looks at Karen, then back at me, grinning. She's in big trouble now, he says. I stand up slow, my knees wet, my shirt sticking to me. I brush some mud off my pants, feel the rain on my face, and look at the crowd. Let's clean this up, I tell Pete. The neighbors cheer louder, someone even starts clapping like it's a show. Karen's big moment is over, and she knows it. She looks small now, not so loud anymore. Pete pulls out a small knife from his belt, cuts the zip ties off my hands. My wrists are red and sore, but I shake them out, stretch a little. He picks up Karen's fake badge, it's just plastic, says Neighborhood Patrol in big letters, and her megaphone, all wet and muddy now. This is going to the station, he says, putting them in a bag in his car. I stand there, look at Karen, and say, take her in, Pete. She's acting like a cop, grabbing me, that's not okay. She needs to learn. Karen starts waving her arms, yelling like a crazy person. This is about keeping things nice, she shouts. His mud is ruining our street. I'm protecting Pinewood. You can't do this to me. Pete grabs her arm, gentle but firm, says, come on, ma'am. Let's go. She pulls back, screams, I'm not going anywhere. I'm the law here. But Pete doesn't let go. He walks her to the car, opens the back door. She's still shouting, the rules matter. He's the problem. You're all wrong. As he sits her down and shuts the door. I can hear her through the window, banging on the glass, yelling, mud's a crime. You'll see. I'll be back. Pete gets in the driver's seat, shakes his head, starts the car. The real red and blue lights flash, not her fake ones, and he drives off slow, tires splashing through puddles. Neighbors watch, standing in the rain with umbrellas and jackets. Mrs. Carter's still filming, says, finally. She's gone. Mr. Jenkins nods, good riddance to her. A kid on a bike yells, bye, crazy lady. I turn around, head home, my boots squishing with every step. Sarah's at the door, holding a towel, looking worried. What's all that noise? She asks, seeing me wet and muddy. I tell her everything: fishing, the rain, Karen tying me up, Pete taking her away. She drops the towel, grabs my shoulders, says, she tied you up? Jim, why didn't you stop her? I shrug, say, I wanted her to show everyone who she really is. She's done now. Sarah's mad but happy I'm okay. She hugs me tight, says, you're too calm sometimes, Jim. Tommy runs in, eyes big, asks, did you fight her, Dad? I say, no, Pete took her. Ellie's behind him, holding her stuffed bear, asks, is she in jail now? I say, maybe, we'll see. They both grin, run off to tell the dog about it. I sit down, dry off, drink some water. Sarah makes me a sandwich, says, no more trouble, okay? I nod, but I know it's not over yet. An hour later, Pete calls. She's at the station, he says. We charged her with acting like a cop, grabbing you, and making a big scene. She sat in a cell all night, wouldn't stop talking, kept saying the mud was a crime, said we're all wrong. I ask, what's next? He says, judge saw her this morning. Bail's $800, her sister came, paid it, took her home. Court's in 3 weeks. She might get probation, but if she fights, could be 6 months in jail. She's mad, but she's not yelling anymore. By supper, Mrs. Carter's video is everywhere, sheriff versus fake cop. It's got 500 likes already, comments saying, Karen's crazy, and Sheriff Jim's the best. Neighbors come by. Mr. Jenkins brings tea, says, she's been a pain for years. A lady down the street brings cookies, leaves a note, thanks, Sheriff. Tommy watches the video on Sarah's phone, laughs, Dad, you're famous. Ellie says, you're a hero. Sarah shakes her head, says, I just want a quiet life, Jim. I smile, Pinewood feels better already. I thought that was the end of it, but 2 weeks later, I find a letter taped to my door, no stamp, just Karen's messy writing, Neighborhood Tribunal for Jim Daniels, breaking peace and ruining Pinewood. Saturday, 6 p.m., Community Center. I show Sarah, she laughs, says, she's lost her mind. I say, yeah, but I'm going. She needs to stop. I grab the old HOA book from the garage, real papers we got when we moved in. It's got all the boring stuff, but it's the truth. Saturday comes, and I walk to the community center. It's a small place, white walls, a few tables, some chairs. The room's dark, maybe 20 people inside, Karen's friends, people who still listen to her. She's up front, wearing a jacket over her shirt, no shiny stuff this time. She's got a table set up like a judge, banging a spoon on it, yelling, quiet. We're starting the tribunal. People sit down, looking nervous or bored. Karen starts her big speech, pointing at me. This man's a problem, she says. His truck's always dirty, mud everywhere. His mailbox is falling apart, his grass is too long, his trash cans are out too late. He's ruining Pinewood. He doesn't care about our rules. She's got a list, reads it loud, mud, mailbox, grass, even says my dog barks too much and scares her cat. She's pacing back and forth, waving her hands, saying I'm a danger to the neighborhood. Her friends nod, but they don't look happy, just scared or tired of her. I sit there, let her talk for a while. She goes on and on, says I'm a bad neighbor, says I don't belong here, says I'm the reason Pinewood's falling apart. She even says my truck's mud is making kids sick because it's so dirty. People start whispering, some roll their eyes, some look at me like they're sorry. I wait till she's done, then stand up slow, holding the HOA book. Pinewood HOA stopped in 2009, I say, nice and clear. There's no HOA here. No rules, no group, nothing. You're making this up, Karen. I open the book, start reading pages about how the HOA ended, how the last people quit, how there's been no meetings or votes since then. It's boring stuff, dates, names, votes, but it's real. I read slow, show them the dates, July 15, 2009, last meeting. No new leaders. Done. I look at Karen, say, you've got no power here. People start moving. A lady in the back stands up, grabs her bag, walks out quiet. A man follows, says, I'm done with this nonsense. Karen yells, this is for order. Sit down, but they don't listen. More people leave, 5, then 10, then half the room's empty. Karen shouting, you're all wrong. I'm saving Pinewood, but nobody cares anymore. She grabs her papers, throws them on the table, stomps out the door, her last friend running after her. I stay a bit, talk to the people who didn't leave. Mr. Jenkins says, she's been at us for years, glad you stopped her. Mrs. Carter hugs me, says, you're good for Pinewood, Jim. A guy I don't know shakes my hand, says, thanks for shutting her up. I walk home, tell Sarah what happened. She's happy, says, no more Karen, right? I nod. Later, we hear Karen moved, packed her SUV, went 3 towns away. People say she's bothering a new street now, yelling about their mailboxes. I feel bad for them, but Pinewood's free of her. It's a sunny day now, a month later. I'm standing by my truck, parked in the same spot where Karen dragged me out. Mud's on it again, went fishing yesterday with Tommy and Ellie. We caught 5 fish, Tommy got 2, Ellie cheered so loud the fish probably hurt her. I've got coffee in my hand, warm and strong, leaning on the truck. Sarah's in the yard, planting flowers, red ones, her favorite. Tommy's kicking a ball around, yelling, I'm gonna be a sheriff too. Ellie's sitting on the grass, drawing a picture of me with a big star on my chest. I think back to that day, lying on the wet road, hands tied, Karen screaming at me. I came to Pinewood for a quiet life. Sarah wanted the kids to grow up safe, no city noise. My sheriff job was supposed to be easy, less trouble, more time with my family. But Karen turned a calm morning into a big fight. She thought she could boss me around, thought she was in charge. She didn't know who I was. That badge under my jacket, it's heavy, means something. She picked the wrong guy to mess with. Now let me tell you what happened to Karen. She got in big trouble, and I'll tell you all about it. Pete called me a few days ago, gave me the full story. After he took her to the station that day, they charged her with 3 things: acting like a cop when she's not, grabbing me and tying me up, and making a big scene in the street. She had to stay in a jail cell that night. Pete said she wouldn't stop talking the whole time. She kept yelling, "Mud's a crime. You're all wrong. I'm saving Pinewood." The other people in the cells got mad, told her to be quiet, but she didn't listen. Pete said they had to move her to a different cell just to keep things calm. The next morning, they took her to see the judge. Karen stood there, still wearing her shiny jacket, but she wasn't yelling anymore. Her sister came with her, looking embarrassed. The judge looked at all the charges. Pete showed him the fake badge, the megaphone, and Mrs. Carter's video of Karen tying me up. The judge asked Karen, "Why did you think you could act like a cop?" Karen said, "I was just trying to keep the street nice." His truck was dirty. The judge shook his head, said, "You're not a cop. You can't tie people up. That's against the law." The judge set her bail at $800, her sister paid it, and they let Karen go home that day. But she had to wait for her court date, which was 3 weeks later. Pete kept an eye on her, made sure she didn't cause more trouble. When the court day came, Karen had to go back. Pete was there, and he told me everything. Karen stood in front of the judge again, this time with a lawyer her sister hired. The lawyer tried to say Karen was just trying to help the neighborhood, but the judge didn't buy it. The judge said, "You broke the law, Karen. You acted like a cop, you tied up a man, and you caused a big problem in the street. That man was the sheriff, and you didn't even know. You're lucky he didn't get hurt." Then he gave her the punishment, 1 year of probation. That means Karen has to follow strict rules for a whole year, no trouble, no yelling at people, no acting like a cop. If she breaks those rules, she'll go to jail for 6 months. The judge also made her pay a fine $500 for what she did. And he told her, "You can't come back to Pinewood and bother people. Stay away from that street." Karen didn't say much, she just nodded, looked down. Her sister took her home after that. Pete says Karen's been quiet since then, staying at her sister's house. Her sister watches her all the time, makes sure she doesn't cause more problems. Pete heard from someone that Karen tried to start a new neighborhood group where she lives now, but her sister stopped her, said, "No way, Karen. You're done with that." Pete thinks she's scared now, knows if she messes up, she's going to jail. I hope she learned her lesson, but with Karen, you never know. She's the kind of person who doesn't give up easy. Back in Pinewood, things are good now, better than ever. Neighbors are friendly again. Mrs. Carter waves every morning, says, "Morning, Sheriff." Mr. Jenkins stops by, talks about his flowers, says, "You fix things around here." Kids ride their bikes past my house, yell, "Hi, Mr. Jim." Tommy loves it, tells his friends, "My dad's the sheriff." Ellie shows her drawing to everyone, says, "My dad's a hero." Sarah's planting her flowers, looks up, smiles. "No more crazy ladies?" she asks. I laugh, say, "Not here, not anymore." I sip my coffee, watch the street. It's quiet, birds singing, sun warm on my face. My truck's muddy, but nobody cares. I'm taking the kids fishing again tomorrow, early, like always. We'll pack sandwiches, sit by the lake, laugh about the fish we catch. Pinewood's mine again, just like I wanted. Karen didn't know who she tied up that day. Sheriff's still here, and that's how it's gonna stay.